All right, welcome back to the Burns and Gambo show here on this Thursday when we all get together on Monday. Of course, we still have a show tomorrow, but when we all get together on Monday, free agency is going to start, Gambo, and it's one of those like the legal tampering, where you're allowed to talk to agents, you're allowed to, I guess, basically agree to a deal in principle, but you can't sign it for a couple of days. I think it's starting at 1 o'clock on Monday. You're allowed to legally tamper. You're allowed to speak to agents. You're allowed to start negotiating. And based off of our previous experience, we kind of know that Monday's probably going to be a pretty day, right? Pretty busy day in terms of the stories coming out and who's talking to who and what. And, of course, the Cardinals go into this day, unlike a lot of teams, the Cardinals are in a position of strength in that you are seeing teams all around the NFL right now cutting guys to get cap compliant, right? Like
mainly safeties.
Yeah. A lot of,
you're a safety, you got cut.
Okay, so I'm not the only. You noticed this too, right?
Yes. $100 million in safeties have been cut this year. $100 million. Like a crazy amount of money. And it seems to be it's just like the safeties are taking it on the chin right now. NFL teams are increasingly deciding that expensive safeties aren't worth their money. Several safeties with lucrative contracts have been cut already this season with 6 more days left. The total cash that NFL teams saved is $103 million. Now, you start to go through some of those guys. You're talking about Justin Simmons, who was cut today. That saves them $14.5. The Eagles saved $13.7 with Kevin Byard. Seattle saved a ton with Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs. Buffalo with Jordan Poyer. You start to look at all the safeties that are being cut. And yeah, I mean, if you're a safety making over $10 million, there's a good chance you could be a cap casualty.
Cardinals have a safety making over $10
They
million.
do have a safety making over $10 million.
They have a really good safety making over $10 million. Let's have the Budda conversation, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's roll up our sleeves and get to work on the Budda conversation. Now, no one's sitting here suggesting that Budda's going to get cut. All right, and I know we use that as sort of a conversation starter, but we use that basically to kind of point out what you just said. It would seem like the safety position is the one where a lot of teams are looking at it and saying, okay, that's where we can cut. That's where we can save money. That's where we're spending too much money. But again, these teams that are making these decisions are ones that are over the cap and have to get cap compliant and have to get their nut. The Cardinals are not in that position. The Cardinals have tons of cap space relative to everybody else. So they're not in a position where they have to do anything. But if we are going to have the conversation about safeties and how much money they make, Budda Baker's going into the last year of his contract. He's scheduled to make about $14.5 million. We all remember what we went through last year with Budda, where he wanted to trade. Ultimately they came to an agreement. Do the Cardinals need to make a decision this offseason about what to do with Budda Baker going into the last year of a deal that pays him about $14.5 million?
So I think they're in the same position now as they were last year. You have to have guys on the team that are leaders. You have to have guys that lead by example. You've got a young roster. How many more draft picks are you going to add this year? You're going to add so many draft picks this year. You've got to have a guy that kind of sets the tone for how to prepare the right way, how to act the right way, how to do interviews the right way, how to talk to coaches the right way, how to practice the right way, how to play. Like, you need guys like that. You have to have guys like that. It's not like Budda's 32 years old. He's 27?
I have to look.
28? I don't even think I think he's still in his – look at his age. I think he's definitely under 30. It's 28, 27 or 28.
I'm looking.
Okay.
I'm 28. He's 28
years old.
28 years old.
So you've got a guy still in his prime, still plays the game at a high level. I can't imagine that you wouldn't want to keep Budda Baker. You've got $50-something million in cap space. This isn't like you're a team that's up against the cap and you're desperate, so you're going to cut a good player to create more cap money. If you didn't have plans for Budda to be here long term, wouldn't you have just done it last year?
Traded him last year?
Just last year. Like, why would you have kept Budda if your plan was to get rid of him a year from now? You wouldn't have. You knew you weren't going to win last year. Why would you have done that?
I don't have a good answer to that question. I don't know why you would.
That would be mismanagement
last
to me.
year, right? Yeah, like if you were going to trade him last year when you knew you were going to have a bad year, when he was a year younger. Because I mean, now, I think part of the question and part of the equation that has to go into this is Budda Baker starting. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but is he starting to slip a little bit? He was Pro Bowler this year. But as we noted at the time when he made the Pro Bowl, his stats weren't exactly, didn't exactly have the Pro Bowl shine to them, did they?
Yes.
And Antoine Winfield Jr. was like, hey, what am I doing? Well, actually, it was Antoine Winfield Sr.
The father.
Who was like, what is going on when my kid's not making the Pro Bowl and he is?
I think he demanded a recount. I think he demanded a recount.
Did he demand a recount?
Yes, he demanded a recount.
I remember he wasn't very happy, but there's beyond the stats and beyond the numbers, there is something about Budda Baker that he's like one of those guys that in the most extreme circumstances, that's the only time I would ever think about wanting to get rid of Budda Baker. I don't want to get rid of Budda Baker. He means he's too much of a fan favorite. He's too good in the locker room. He's too good with the younger guys. All I'm saying is, if you're going to keep him for a few more years, it would probably be a good idea to extend him now, because he goes into his final year of his cut. You can still extend him before free agency starts.
Yeah.
But why not extend him now? Get his cap number a little bit lower, keep him around here for a couple of more years. It's just a question of whether you want to invest more money into a position that people around the league seemingly are deciding to invest less in.
But I also think
now.
it's about having leaders. It's about having alpha males. It's about having those guys, that make it easier on the coach. Look, Budda's been here for 7 years. How many winning seasons he's experienced? One.
I was doing the math in my head. One. Right?
The year they won 11 games. That's it. Guys had 6 times he has not had a winning season out of his 7 years with the NFL. It's almost like, okay, he's willing to pay his dues. Now, last year it looked like he could be on the way out, and they ended up winning 4 football games. But they knew they weren't going to win a lot of games, and yet they let a lot of guys go last year. They didn't want to let Budda go. Has to be a reason.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine if they say, we're going to keep Budda for 1 year and then get rid of him. That doesn't make any sense either.
Jonathan Gannon was asked about this last week. Does Budda's contract need to be addressed in the offseason? Here's what he said.
That's kind of Monty will handle that. But obviously I know the value that he brings to this organization and the team. And, I want to see 3 out there.
I think a lot of people do too. And I think, to your point, last year when Gannon was hired, and Monty was hired, all they talked about was wanting a team filled with Buddas, right?
Yes.
A team filled with guys like Budda Baker. What about that part of the equation has changed a year later? Nothing. You still want a team full of Budda Bakers. And he's not, at 28 years old, yeah, I'm sure he's got a lot of wear and tear. He hasn't missed a ton of games. Takes a lot of hits. He delivers a lot of hits. He's one of those guys, right? He's a missile out there on the field. So I'm sure his shelf life for a longer career is probably shorter than other players at other positions. I'll totally give you that. But I do think that what he brings on and just as importantly off the field for the Cardinals is worth keeping around, and I would think probably worth giving him an extension. Because if you're not going to extend him, all right, if you're not going to give him a contract extension and keep him around a few more years, then you might want to entertain the thought of trading him. I mean, it seems to me you would
have got more from last year, so then you made a mistake by not trading him last year when his value would have been higher.
Because his value would have been higher a year ago. His value would have been a lot higher.
What's the cap savings? $14, $15 million? I
think it's almost like $19 million.
Is it $19 million?
Well, I think with the dead cap, I think it's like $16 million. I think he would count like $3 million against the cap and then get like $6. But they don't need the savings. But then you need a safety. They don't need the savings.
No, they got $50-60 million in cap money.
Puts them in a different situation. I hope they keep him. And we're not trying to cause any alarm and make anybody think that they're going to get rid of him or he's not going to be around. It was just, and believe me, all these safeties around the NFL, they noticed the trend too. They saw it. They saw what was going on.
Thanks for watching Burns and Gambo. Click to see more from the guys and hit the button in the middle to subscribe so you never miss a video from Arizona sports.